The Lord will make you face the fear, okay? The Lord will have you face the fear. Let me explain. Many of you have a marital promise from God, right? That God's going to restore your marriage, or that God is going to restore this divine connection with your God-ordained spouse, okay? Now, you have the promise, right? You have the confirmation. You know what God is showing you. But here comes the process on what God might allow to happen. And I know for me, I've always had a fear of a lot of things happening on my journey. And I will say, like, everything that I feared, not all of them happened, but majority of them happened, okay? So on my one-on-one calls, right, I hear, or I've seen people, especially in the community, say, I'm fearful that he's going to leave me and go be with this other person. Or I'm fearful that the divorce is going to go through. Or I'm fearful of all of these different things happening. And I want you to know that God has not given you this spirit of fear. Now, I know that this is easier said than actually done. Like, it's easier to say it, than to face it. But it's true. But let me help you understand why. See, the Bible tells us that God can do all things, right? And I want you to know that even if God allows the thing you fear the most to happen, it doesn't cancel out what he can do, because he's God. God is still in control, even if the divorce goes through, even if they move out to go be with someone else, even if they cut you off, God is still in control, okay? So Psalms 127 tells us that unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers labor in vain, okay? Unless the Lord builds the house, the labor labors in vain. That means that unless God is in it, whatever their choices are, it's not going to work, because it does not have God's blessing on it. So if the house is built off of God and God is in it, it will prosper. If it does not have the Lord in it, it will not stand. And I'm saying this because I want you to understand that success comes from God. So it doesn't matter the choices that they're making right now, because success comes from God. God has to literally have his hand on it in order for it to work. So today I had a one-on-one call with someone, and basically her husband moved out. All right. He moved out. He thought that he could be better without his wife and kids. Okay. And he got his own apartment, and he just wanted to go and do what he wanted to do. Now, very devastating situation for the wife, right? Very devastating, because she did not want that to happen, because abandonment was something that the enemy was using in her life. However, God stepped in the place of abandonment and showed her that there's no need for you to feel abandoned. I am enough for you, and not your husband. All right. So that was the first lesson that she had to learn. The second lesson was finding security in God. Okay. Knowing and believing that the impossible is in the hand of God, that God can do all things. So she's going through this process, and eventually she is walking in her breakthrough season, and her spouse began to rekindle. So very recently, she went to his apartment, and there was absolutely nothing there. Okay. So whatever he thought his life was going to be like when he moved out from his wife and kids to go do what he wanted to do, God did not bless it. God did not bless where he went. Okay. So again, success comes from God. And I walked her through what she needed to do in this situation, where she could visibly see that God is not blessing his choice that he made out of free will. Okay. So yes, God can very much so let people make their own choices out of free will. But prosperity and the outcome of being blessed is literally up to God. Now, I've seen situations, and I know for me, it looked like my spouse was extremely blessed out of the will of God, but I had to understand that God had a timing, and before God began to deal with my spouse, he had to deal with Raven. And I had to learn how to rely on God. I had to come out of idolatry. I had to be free from control. I had a lot of things that God had to set me free from before God can do what he said he would do in the life of my spouse. So if you are fearful of something, don't fear it, okay? Try not to, right? But whatever route or whatever God allows to happen on this journey, the success piece comes from him. And I know that you probably are still facing like, dang, Raven, I hear you, but man, this don't feel good. Man, this hurts. Guess what? This literally is a season. This is not forever. So the pain that you feel will not be forever. And if God lets that thing happen, because ultimately he is in control. If you are being obedient to God and you're doing everything and he allows this thing to happen, if he allows the divorce to go through, if he allows the other woman to move in, if he allows all of this to happen, best believe that he has a solution for it. There is an expiration date, because what he said is going to happen. It doesn't matter what's happening now, because that has an expiration date. And what appears to be successful is only a setup for God to get the glory. Okay? So God is only teaching you how to walk by faith and not by sight. That's it. You just got to learn how to walk by faith and not by sight. And we do not get to dictate the battles that God uses to develop us. We're not in control of that. If you got a yes from God, if God has shown you it is his will, guess what? You can't dictate the how and the process, okay? Things prosper because God is in it, all right? Again, things prosper because God is in it. Unless the Lord builds the house, all right? The laborers labor in vain. It don't matter where they went at for Valentine's Day. It don't matter what you saw on Facebook. Unless God builds the relationship, it's in vain. So being that we know that it is not the will of God that they are together, all of the effort is only temporary. It is in vain. They will put all their money into it. They will do whatever they need to do to try to make it work. I promise you, within the right timing, guess what? It's in vain. And sometimes God does not immediately remove the relationship, because he will wait until they are good in love and quickly humble them, so they never make a decision to be out of his will again, because a broken heart is something. Okay? So trust in the way that God is doing it. Okay? If you are a person that needs a one-on-one call with me, I have time available this week. I love talking to you guys. I hear y'all, okay? I love talking to you guys. And I have time. I know the calendar might say one thing, but I have time tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday, Friday. I have time. Just send me a message if you want a sooner time than what's on the calendar. All right? I love you, and I'll see you in the next video.